It almost looked like Canada's garbage dispute with the Philippines was nearly over after Canada hired a firm to retrieve it this week and bring it back to Canada by the end of June. But today, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte rejected that plan, saying it's not happening soon enough. He says the 69 containers of trash rotting in the Philippines for more than 5 years will now be sent to Canada no later than next week. The containers were initially sent to the Philippines by a Canadian company, falsely labeled as plastics for recycling. So what does the federal government do now? Sean Fraser is Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. He joins us now from Halifax. Hi, Mr. Fraser. Nice to see you.
A pleasure as always. Thanks for having me.
So it was the spokesperson for President Duterte today who told a media briefing in Manila that Canada's June timeline, that's the timeline that your government announced this week, for returning the garbage or bringing it back to this country is not good enough. He said it has to be gone by next week. What is the government going to do?
Look, we are absolutely committed to finding a solution here. We've been in regular contact with our counterparts in the Philippines. Canada has offered to take back and pay for the transportation and disposal of the garbage at issue. This is something that we're committed to finding a solution for and committed to doing it in short order.
What does short order mean? Does that mean that it will be done sooner than the end of June?
The last update that I had understood was we were expecting to see the containers moving as soon as the beginning of June, and to have the containers removed by June 10th. There's been likely ongoing conversations since then, but we are working towards removing this in an expedited way. And quite frankly, over the past few weeks, I've seen the process move faster than I've seen government move on many different files. I've been impressed with the ability to award a contract and go through a procurement process on such an expedited basis.
Well, was the government kind of embarrassed into doing that by President Duterte so publicly admonishing Canada for keeping the garbage there for so long?
No, and in fact, we've been working on this before it came into the news for some time. As you know, it's been the containers were sent over and mislabeled before we took office in 2013. We changed the regulations because we didn't actually have the legal framework in place to demand the repatriation of waste that was sent without the consent of the receiving country. So we've actually changed those in 2016, and we're working on a diplomatic solution to this before it became a public news issue.
That was 3 years ago, to be fair, though. That was 3 years ago. And the Prime Minister first in 2015, after being elected, said that he was going to do something about it in Manila.
That's right. And what had actually happened, there was a domestic court process, I understand, in the Philippines that actually found someone liable to remove it, but they've been unable to secure payment from those folks to make it happen. The Canadian company who's at fault has ceased to operate. They were registered, I believe, in 2004 and haven't really done much since. So there has been others that you could point to that should have been taking responsibility. When we realized those solutions weren't going to present themselves, we stepped up to the plate and said we are committed to making sure this is removed, and we're willing to pay for it. And we do have some details to sort out on the timing, but our commitment remains unshaken to taking these containers out of the Philippines and having them returned to Canada.
I understand what you're saying, and you're characterizing them as details. The president of the Philippines is saying that he's going to send them on a ship next week. And I just want to be clear, is that a possibility? Like, has that been conveyed to your government? Is that realistic? What do you think is actually going to happen?
So the discussions that we've been having with our counterparts on the diplomatic level, both with Global Affairs and Environment and Climate Change Canada, have actually been very positive, and we were working towards a solution that parties seemed happy with. To be honest, it was a little surprising for me to see such a strong statement from the President in light of ongoing conversations, but obviously it's a priority for him, and I know it's a priority for Filipino communities throughout Canada as well. We're not going to give up on this. We are going to find a solution and ensure that these containers are on their way back to Canada for processing ASAP.
What happens when they return? Can you sort of tell us a bit more about what the plan is? We know that you've awarded a contract, but do they go over there, pick it up, bring it back? Where do they bring it back? Where does it end up? Where is it processed?
Certainly. So one of the reasons it takes a few days or a week to deal with this is we actually have to make sure that we know what's in the containers. We have to likely fumigate them. We have to ensure there's not a risk of things like invasive species or risk to human health before the containers are returned. When they get back, there'll likely be a facility for processing on the West Coast. I believe Port Metro Vancouver is going to be entertaining a motion in the coming days as to whether they're interested in taking the containers. So that is built into the, it's the responsibility of the contractor who's just been awarded the contract to take care of the disposal as well. So that'll be sorted out by the general contractor that we've just awarded the contract to.
I believe the contract was for $1.14 million. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the total amount that this is going to cost Canadian taxpayers, or could that number increase?
That is the total cost for the transportation of the containers, the acceptance at port, and disposal of the waste contained therein. I don't expect that the cost will increase from there.
So that's it. That's the most it will cost, you think?
Yes, I believe so.
And when it does get back here, you're saying the timeline. Sorry, just to be clear again, was June 10th. You think is the earliest?
June 10th is when we expect the last container to leave the Philippines. We expect them to start moving sooner than that, potentially at the very beginning of the month, which I know is pressing with the importance of Filipino Heritage Month starting on June 1st. I know communities across Canada really would like to see these containers moved, and we're committed to seeing them get out of a port in the Philippines as quickly as possible.
Is there any way for taxpayers, for the government, to recoup the money that you're about to spend, given that company has gone out of business?
Quite frankly, it's something that's extraordinarily disappointing. This should properly be the responsibility of the company who exported the materials without the consent of the Philippines and mislabeled the contents. Canadians should be very disappointed that a business operator in our country would try to pass this responsibility on. To the extent that we find someone who could potentially, we could recoup the losses from that Canadian taxpayers are going to pay, we would explore those options. However, with my background in litigation before I entered politics, I don't want to throw good money after bad. I want to ensure that there's a remedy at the end of the day before we pursue those options.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Fraser. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, a pleasure as always.
That's Sean Fraser, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.